Resilient ownership, the practical philosophy of habits, grit, and empowered leadership. Chapter 6. Genuine influence through empathetic connection. In the philosophy of resilient ownership, genuine influence stands as the relational glue that binds individuals into cohesive, high-performing teams and organizations. Influence here is not manipulation, coercion, or the exercise of raw authority. It is the earned capacity to shape thoughts, behaviors, and outcomes through authentic human connection rooted in empathy. Leaders who master this principle create environments where people willingly align their efforts, share ideas openly, and commit deeply, not because they must, but because they feel truly seen, valued, and understood. Without genuine influence, extreme ownership risks becoming top-down control. Radical candor can feel like criticism, the coaching habit may land as interrogation, and even the strongest grit or intrinsic drive fails to scale beyond isolated individuals. Empathetic connection transforms personal resilience into collective strength, turning the philosophy from a solo discipline into a shared way of operating. At its core, genuine influence rests on a fundamental recognition. People are emotional beings first, logical second. Attempts to change behavior through criticism, condemnation, or complaint almost always provoke defensiveness and resistance. Instead, the path to influence begins with making the other person feel important in sincere, specific ways. Honest appreciation, delivered genuinely and focused on effort or character rather than empty flattery, satisfies a deep human need and opens the door to collaboration. Leaders in resilient ownership learn to arouse an eager want by framing requests or ideas in terms of what genuinely motivates the other person, aligning personal drives with collective goals. This approach avoids win-lose dynamics and builds mutual investment. The foundational practices of empathetic connection are straightforward, yet profoundly effective when practiced consistently. Become genuinely interested in other people. Ask questions about their experiences, challenges, and aspirations, then listen actively without planning your next response. Encourage others to talk about themselves. The sweetest sound to any person remains their own name, used in sincere conversation. Smile, not as a forced performance, but as a signal of warmth and approachability that sets a positive emotional tone. These small behaviors compound through atomic habits, Chapter 2, turning empathy into a daily architecture rather than an occasional soft skill. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. Frame ideas, feedback, or vision through their lens. What benefits them, advances their mastery, or serves their sense of purpose, Chapter 3. This principle integrates directly with intrinsic drive. When leaders demonstrate understanding of autonomy needs, mastery goals, and larger purpose, people feel their internal motivations are respected rather than overridden. The result is voluntary engagement rather than reluctant compliance. Empathy, the ability to perceive and relate to another's thoughts, feelings, and experiences, serves as the engine of genuine influence. It requires setting aside one's own assumptions and judgments long enough to see the world from the other's perspective. Judgment closes doors, curiosity opens them. Leaders cultivate this by practicing self-awareness, noticing their own ladder of inference, quick leaps from observable data to conclusions, and deliberately slowing down to ask, what might I be missing about their situation? This empathetic stance aligns perfectly with the growth mindset, Chapter 1. When abilities are viewed as expandable, differences in perspective become opportunities for mutual growth rather than threats to ego. A leader who believes in development naturally extends that belief to others, approaching conversations with the assumption that understanding their viewpoint will reveal valuable insights. This empathetic foundation makes extreme ownership, Chapter 4, relational rather than isolating. Total accountability does not require the leader to shoulder every burden alone. It invites shared ownership through connection. When a setback occurs, the empathetic leader begins with, "Here is what I own in this outcome," then genuinely seeks to understand each team member's experience. What did this feel like from your side? What obstacles did you face that I may not have seen? This vulnerability builds trust and encourages reciprocal ownership. People are far more willing to own their part when they feel their challenges have been heard and respected. Ownership thus becomes collaborative problem-solving instead of blame distribution or heroic solo fixing. Grit, Chapter 5. Scales through genuine influence. Passionate perseverance is difficult to sustain in isolation. It thrives in relationships where individuals feel supported and connected to something larger. Empathetic leaders recognize the emotional toll of long-term effort, plateaus, frustration, repeated setbacks, and respond with understanding rather than demands for tougher mindset. They celebrate small improvements sincerely, acknowledge the human cost of perseverance, and connect daily struggles to shared purpose. This creates a culture where grit becomes contagious. Team members persevere not only for personal growth, but because they do not want to let down people who genuinely care about their success and well-being. The 5 dysfunctions of a team, Chapter 8, dissolve most effectively when genuine influence and empathy are present. Absence of trust is the root dysfunction. Empathy directly counters it by demonstrating that leaders and colleagues are willing to understand before judging. When people feel seen, they risk vulnerability, sharing ideas, admitting mistakes, or expressing concerns, knowing they will be met with curiosity rather than condemnation. Healthy conflict follows naturally. Empathetic connection allows disagreement to focus on ideas and solutions rather than personal attacks. Commitment strengthens because alignment emerges from mutual understanding rather than forced consensus. Accountability becomes easier when people know feedback stems from care, not control. Results orientation sharpens as collective empathy keeps the team focused on shared outcomes that matter to everyone. Radical candor, Chapter 9, requires the relational safety that empathetic connection provides. Caring personally while challenging directly only works when the caring personally part is visibly authentic. Leaders who have invested in genuine interest, active listening, and perspective-taking can deliver tough feedback without destroying relationships. The recipient feels the challenge as an investment in their growth, aligned with the growth mindset, rather than a personal indictment. Candor thus becomes a tool for mutual expansion instead of a source of fear or resentment. The coaching habit, Chapter 10, reaches its full power through empathy. Powerful questions. What does success look like for you here? What obstacles are you facing that I might help remove? How does this connect to what matters most to you? Land effectively only when asked from a place of genuine curiosity about the other person's inner world. Empathetic listening ensures the coach hears not just the words, but the underlying concerns, motivations, and emotions. This turns coaching from a technique into a relational practice that activates autonomy, deepens mastery, and clarifies purpose. Teams coached this way develop self-reliance because they feel supported in their unique journeys. Disciplined greatness and the hedgehog concept, Chapter 7, benefit enormously from genuine influence. Identifying what an organization or individual can be best at, what drives results, and what ignites passion requires deep listening across stakeholders. Empathetic leaders surface hidden insights, align diverse perspectives, and build buy-in for the focused path forward. Level 5, humility, personal modesty paired with professional will, manifests naturally when leaders prioritize understanding others over asserting their own brilliance. Disciplined action sticks when people feel their contributions and constraints have been genuinely considered. In daily leadership practice, cultivating genuine influence begins with small, consistent habits. Start conversations by asking about the other person and listening more than speaking. Use names sincerely. Offer specific, honest appreciation tied to observable behaviors or character. Before giving feedback or direction, pause to consider their perspective. If I were in their position, with their information and pressures, how would this land? Practice perspective-taking deliberately, perhaps by writing a brief summary of the other person's likely viewpoint before difficult conversations. Over time, these atomic practices compound into a leadership presence that feels trustworthy and magnetic. Challenges arise, of course. Empathy can be emotionally taxing, and in high-pressure environments, the temptation to default to efficiency over connection is real. Resilient ownership anticipates this through the growth mindset and grit. View empathy as a developable skill strengthened by deliberate practice, and persevere through the discomfort of truly hearing difficult truths. Balance is essential. Empathy does not mean endless accommodation or avoiding necessary decisions. It means understanding fully before deciding or acting, ensuring choices serve both people and purpose. When genuine influence through empathetic connection permeates a culture, positivity becomes deeply authentic. It arises not from forced optimism or slogans, but from the quiet confidence of belonging, being valued, and contributing to something meaningful alongside people who care. Teams exhibit higher engagement, lower turnover, greater creativity, and stronger resilience because relationships provide the emotional safety net for risk-taking and perseverance. This chapter reveals that resilient ownership is fundamentally relational. The earlier principles, mindset, habits, drive, ownership, grit, gain their full expression and scalability through human connection. A leader may possess exceptional personal discipline and clarity, yet without the ability to influence through empathy, impact remains limited. Conversely, when empathetic connection is present, the philosophy spreads organically as people experience its benefits in their own growth and relationships. Genuine influence is therefore not a soft add-on, but a core competency of the philosophy. It turns individual resilience into organizational resilience, personal accountability into shared accountability, and isolated effort into multiplied excellence. Leaders who invest here discover that the most powerful way to move people is to first let them know they matter, deeply, sincerely, and consistently. In a world often marked by transactional interactions and surface-level communication, this empathetic approach offers a durable competitive advantage. The ability to build teams that do not merely comply, but commit, do not just perform, but thrive, and do not simply follow, but co-create the future. The principles that follow, disciplined greatness, team cohesion, radical candor, and coaching, build directly upon this relational foundation. Together they form a seamless system where empathy ensures that rigor serves humanity, and humanity ensures that rigor endures. In resilient ownership, genuine influence through empathetic connection is where leadership becomes less about directing others and more about unlocking what others are capable of becoming together.